In this lesson, we will talk about Vray render types. If we will press render, we have two options. We have progressive and we have bucket. Here, if we enable progressive, we can see the settings of progressive. We see the minimum and maximum subdivs and also the noise threshold. We will talk about that. If we switch to bucket, we can see the minimum and maximum subdivs as well and the noise threshold. They actually do the same thing but in different ways. So basically we have a simple scene. I've created a Vray light. You can find the lights here. We'll talk about lights a bit later. And you can find this light as well here. We also got a camera. And for now let's talk about the settings of our light. I've increased the multiplier and we will use temperature. We will use temperature every time we create interior design. We will also talk about that. Next we have our Vray physical camera. So if we will get back to our image, we said that our camera is shooting rays towards our object or project. So in this case these are our objects and we are trying to create that render using one of these two methods. Now we are shooting rays towards our object and here interferes one factor. We will talk about noise. So image noise appears due to low sampling. Low sampling means low quality. So you can see here 1 pixel, 1 sample. So by adding samples to our pixels, we are adding quality. Of course, the render time increases. So back to our scene. You can see here the camera view, the Vray physical camera view. We are always using cameras to establish views, to fix our views. And here you can see the camera's options. Mainly these are the options that we will enable to adjust the camera, but we will talk about that a bit later as well. So you can find the camera here from Vray panel, the Vray physical camera. And now let's talk about the type of renders that we have. We have IPR. IPR is basically a pre-render. It's progressively increasing the quality of our image and it's adding samples. I'll show that in a second. So for example, if I have this light, and the reason that I've increased, by the way, you can see here the Vray light lister, we got the settings there as well. I'll switch to camera. So let's see how this is working. If I'll input 1, you can see that we don't have enough light. And if I will raise that to 10, still we don't have enough light. I'll input 150. Keep in mind, in our interior we will have a lot of lights, so also they will have their hierarchy. We will have primary and secondary or decorative lights. In this case we have just one light, so we will have to adjust all those lights. And we will have to control the noise and increase the quality of our image as well to control the quality of our render. So back to max. Here is the button that we can press to stop our render or our IPR as well. If we will go to render elements from Vray to render elements, we can press add here and we can add a layer that will help us to understand how that image sampling is actually performing. So once again, from Vray to render elements and press add. Here we must find the Vray sample rate. That's it. And we will press OK and we will add that render element here. The render elements appear here. For now we don't have it, as we didn't refresh our render. So let's press once again IPR render and you can see that it appeared in our list. I'll explain it in the next lesson. For now you can see the process of sampling or adding quality to our image. Those different colors mean different things. I'll explain them in the next lesson. And you can see that we got a lot of samples there. And I will try to explain how the progressive and bucket actually works. They are used for final render. For the start, we will use always IPR to adjust our renders. So when we press IPR, it's like a live or interactive render. We can adjust different details, mainly lights. You can see here, I can adjust the light. I can increase or decrease the intensity. So we can adjust the medium level that we need. We need no overbrights, or we need no shadows to dark areas as well. So I'll stop the render and let's talk about progressive. If we switch to progressive, you can see here minimum and maximum subdivs. I'll explain that. This is important. This is about adaptivity. So if I will press render using this progressive type, the first type, after we adjusted with IPR our render, you can see that it basically does the same thing. We are progressively increasing the quality of our image. So technically, if we would try to explain what is actually going on here, we can get back to Photoshop, to our image, and we can see passes. So in the first pass, we got 1 pixel and 1 sample. In the second pass, we have 1 pixel and we subdivide it by 2, meaning that we have 2 subdivisions or 4 samples, 2 by 2. In the third pixel, we have 3 subdivisions, meaning that we have 3 by 3 or 9 samples, and so on. You can see here as well the render time. So when we are using a progressive type, this is a type of render that is based on time. Usually we can stop the render when we need it, when the level of quality, desired quality, is achieved. And here you can see the render time. We usually set it to 0, meaning that the image will stop either when it reaches this noise threshold or when we stop manually our render. But now let's get to bucket. You can see here the minimum and maximum subdivs, and we got the bucket. The bucket is actually a square that we are using, and it's using these settings from here to create the ready quality. You can see those buckets running, and this is one bucket that got 48 pixels. We can change that there, but we will leave them as default. The number of buckets depend on your computer, and these parameters control the quality of our image or our image sampling. We will also talk about that in the next lessons. We will try to understand the principle of adaptivity here, and the next thing that we need to understand is how the subdivs are applied in Vray. In the next lesson, I'll try to explain the Vray sample rate so we can see visually how those samples are created.